Hello everybody. So this video is entitled MSTR and Stretch. Mad Mr. Market. Mad Mr. Market. If you were on X today, the sentiment was so bad, the word extreme fear does not even begin to describe how people felt. But the question and the title of this video, for what? For what? Mad Market for what? Is brought to you by the actual price action of Stretch. Stretch, as of right now, my screenshot, after hours, is down 0.11%. Stretch is down 0.11%. After we had a hawkish Fed memo and a hawkish Fed press conference yesterday evening, yesterday afternoon, we had a hawk. Kevin Walsh, some people have hope that he's going to be a dove, but that press conference was not dovish whatsoever. In that press conference, he talked about how they are committed to 2% inflation and they will do everything to fight inflation. The rates were way up yesterday, flat today, but way up yesterday. The 10-year was way up yesterday. Interest rates are going up across the board. Get ready for 8% mortgages. And on a day where rates, or on a day after when rates went up a lot, Stretch is flat. Stretch is entirely flat. So that's why the title of this video, Mad Market for what? For what? Price action. Price action was flat. Price action was flat. So anyways, let's go ahead and talk about this. And I'll start with another stock. Another stock that is doing very well today. And it's HIMS. HIMS is up 11% today. And the sentiment on MSTR right now reminds me of the sentiment of HIMS in February. HIMS in February, it was the end of the world. Everybody who was into HIMS was a dumb person back in February. Everybody hated HIMS and nobody wanted to have anything to do with it. Actually, this video, and this was a cold video with a cold assessment of the facts when I made this video about him, my decision. And as you know, HIMS is a top decision for me. MSTR is a top position. HIMS is a top position. Tesla is a top position. These are my top 3 positions. I made my decision to stay with HIMS for the long run and not fall for the bear argument. And I stuck with HIMS and I still have my entire HIMS position. And HIMS is now $35. It was 15 back then. And it was the end of the world for HIMS. And HIMS is, of course, not quite, but almost a 3x, right? Since this video. Not quite, but, you know, a good 2x since this video in about 2 months. And so that's the problem with social media. Social media is entirely insane. And the fact that algorithms thrive on engagement farming, the fact that this video that I'm making right now on MSTR is probably going to be 1 out of 10. And this video right now that I made on HIMS, I made a video today, this morning on HIMS about HIMS being up 10%. It's 10 out of 10 out of the algo. So nobody's watching the video because everything's going green and going well for HIMS. So nobody's watching the video anymore. Now they're watching MSTR because MSTR is in trouble. But my guess is, and it's not in trouble, I don't think MSTR is in trouble, but the stock price is not doing well. The stock price is not doing well. So because the stock price is not doing well, people are watching it. My guess is that it will be reversed, perhaps sometime down the road when Bitcoin recovers. So this kind of gives me hope. The feeling that we had on HIMS in February is kind of similar to the feeling we're having on MSTR today. But honestly, when you analyze it, it's very tough to understand. So let's just talk about, cold what happened, okay? Yesterday, we had a very bad news on rate. Kevin Walsh was a hawk. Hawks are no good for growth stocks, and they're no good for Bitcoin. AI is kind of in a league of its own right now, and AI is doing well. But it's not necessarily true for other types of assets, and it's definitely not true for a liquidity-sensitive asset like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is very sensitive to liquidity. Bitcoin was hurt by the Fed speech yesterday. Bitcoin dropped to 62,300 today, towards the middle of the day. Okay? And then, of course, as Bitcoin's dropping, it is normal for strategy to drop more. And so strategy's performance today, if you look at IBIT ETF, same market hours, this is why I use IBIT, IBIT was down 2%. Strategy was down 3.4%. So strategy is roughly a 1.6. 1.6 times is the correlation between Bitcoin and strategy. And this is consistent with what we've seen for the past 2 weeks. Strategy has been slightly underperforming the historic 1.5. Historically, the strategy moves at 1.5% for each percent of Bitcoin. Historically, so it's slightly worse than the target, but barely worse. Okay. So this is totally normal. This price action is totally normal. People should really be mad at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not doing well. Strategy is tied to Bitcoin. Strategy is a derivative built on Bitcoin. And STRC is a derivative built on strategy. And STRC trades on sentiment, really. And the sentiment was really bad today. You have to keep in mind that 4/5, so 80% of STRC is actually retail investors. And retail investors can be scared away from their positions really, really quickly. And middle of the day, it sure felt like it's what it was. A lot of retail investors were just selling their STRC because they were scared away by the FUD, by the FUDsters and throwing random words. And of course, it is unfortunate that STRC depegged. It's not the first time that STRC depegged. STRC has depegged multiple times. Depegging is a risk of STRC. And this is why on this channel, and this is true of so many stocks I've covered on this channel, I've always said, you want to ease into position and ease out of position. Because this market is entirely mad that if you exit a position 100%, the whole position you exited, it's probably going to be the wrong price. And if you enter a position 100% one point, it's also going to be the wrong price, because we live in a world where it's not uncommon for assets to move 10% in a matter of hours. In fact, Stretch moved about 8% peak to trough, 8% in a matter of hours, as if the asset had really changed 8% in value in a matter of hours. It's an issue with the bid. It's an issue with a denominator. So DCA in and DCA out, if you actually analyze and you fundamentally believe that Stretch is not good, DCA out of it over maybe multiple weeks. But my guess is that if you do that over multiple weeks, if Bitcoin recovers, STRC very well might recover. It's highly likely. It's highly likely. The problem is, if Bitcoin doesn't recover, if Bitcoin doesn't recover, strategy is no good, STRC is no good, IBIT is no good. And that's why I made my video yesterday about Kevin Walsh being a hawk. And I got to find out that a lot of people on my channel are Fed lovers, and they love the Fed. But I don't think the meeting was satisfactory yesterday. I really don't, and that's why Bitcoin is dropping. And if you look at the Fed, really, we were in December. The Fed was predicting a rate hike in December. Now CME Fed Watch Tool is clearly predicting a rate hike in September. So if CME Fed Watch Tool is predicting a rate hike in September, that means that the market is requiring higher rates. And by the way, SATA depegged too today, quite a bit at one point. SATA down to 93 at one point today. So, and of course, these odds were published today. They changed today. So if the market requires higher rates, it makes sense for these assets to depeg. And what's the fix to that? What's the solution to that? The solution to that is hiking the rates. And in the case of Stretch, it's parametric at this point. In the case of Stretch, now the debate is whether they're going to raise the rates by 0.25 or more next time, or they're going to use some other tool. But the rates are going to be raised. And as the rates are raised over time, these will trend back to 100. That is the nature of these instruments. This is how these instruments were created, and they'll keep raising the rates until that happens. There's also the problem of Bitcoin Stash. The BTC rating at 62,000. The BTC rating on Stretch doesn't look nearly as good. It's a greatly diminished BTC rating because Bitcoin is at near all-time lows. Bitcoin is on the 200-week moving average, as they say. It's oversold. It's so oversold. And yes, Saylor likely made a few mistakes. I've said that. I didn't like the sell. I don't think Saylor liked to sell 32 Bitcoin. I don't think in hindsight, I think he wouldn't have done it. He didn't have a lot of conviction selling that Bitcoin. He didn't like doing it. You could tell in the interviews. So that probably was a mistake. It's not the first time Saylor makes a mistake. He's human, right? Using the cash balance to buy back the convert. Was that a mistake? Was that not a mistake? Only time we tell. They bought back the convert at a discount, at an 8% discount, which is good. So financially, that wasn't a bad move. Now the question is the drawdown on the cash reserve? Do you think Stretch depegged because of a drawdown on the cash reserve, or do you think Stretch depegged because the 10-year yield has gone up and the yields in general has gone up and the Fed has moved more hawkish? Do you think Stretch depegged because of that? Or do you think Stretch depegged because there's been so much FUD lately that a lot of retail investors simply capitulated and sold away at the worst time possible? Or do you think Stretch depegged because some people, of course, moved away from Stretch and bought into SATA? There could be all sorts of reasons. But this is fixed with either raising the yield of Stretch, or this is fixed by actually having a Kevin Walsh who becomes a dove, and I know some of you in my audience seem hopeful about that. So if that happens, that could help any yield instrument. Or this happened, it repegs if Bitcoin rises back to 70,000. That's also could be something bullish. There's many ways that it repegs. And you know, in my mind, this will repeg. In my mind, this is temporary. But if Bitcoin fails, all of this will fail. The homework on Bitcoin still needs to be done. You still need to have belief in Bitcoin to have belief in these instruments. But, and I'll conclude, I suppose, okay, I have more. I have one fact I'll conclude with, but I have more. So I forgot about that slide. Okay, let's talk about that slide. Now we have to face another fact. MSTR and STRC are highly intellectual endeavors and intellectual exercises. And arguing for STRC or MSTR takes a long intellectual conversations, many hours. How are you going to argue that in social media? How can you do that in social media? Are you going to discuss the history of fiat? Are you going to discuss the Medici? Are you going to discuss a topic like the natural interest rate and what the actual natural interest rate is in nature if we didn't have the Fed? How do you discuss this in social media? You can't. So many of the pro arguments for MSTR and STRC fall short on attention span because most people, screaming Ponzi works well on social media. Arguing why a 12% yield on a Bitcoin standard is not far-fetched whatsoever because of deflation, because of technology, because of Austrian economics being the only true economics, because of Keynesian economics being dead. Arguing about all of these, theoretical arguments, that's no good for social media. Social media, what's good for social media, you scream Ponzi. That's what's good for social media. Social media rewards perma-bears and maxi toxicity. Maxi toxicity is rewarded in social media. So that's also one thing that we have to face. And if you want to be away from that toxicity, sometimes I wonder what's the solution to be away with that toxicity. Probably not Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is very subjected to that. Perhaps the only way to be away from that toxicity is maybe buy the S&P 500 index or buy the NASDAQ. But may I remind you, the events of 2020, for example, the NASDAQ dropped more than 30% in a month during the events of 2020. So there's no safe haven. What's the safe haven? Is the safe haven buying a money market account and being okay with 4% yield? Is that the safe haven? Because if that's the safe haven, that means you have to believe in fiat. You have to believe in the numbers thrown at you by different entities. So that's not the safe haven. I'm not sure volatility you can entirely escape. And unfortunately, social media is not the place for intellectual exercises, at least most of the time. By the way, can you entirely escape the FUD from social media? This is another point. This is true for all assets. I started a video talking about HIMS being a victim of this. I remember Google. Do you remember Google 2 years ago? 2 years ago, Google fell victim of this too. People were, with a straight face, big podcasters, big perma-bears, with a straight face, we're arguing that Google search was going to die because of ChatGPT. So that can happen to any asset. What we're going through for MSTR, the FUD, can happen for any asset. And I really think the FUD has a really bad effect. Everything that has always been true about MSTR and STRC remains. And I keep repeating myself. But if Bitcoin fails, everything fails. If Bitcoin is weak, everything is going to be weak. And the reason for this whole madness right now is that Bitcoin is oh so weak. $70,000 Bitcoin fixes just about everything for the stocks, for the preferreds, and for MSTR. The problem is that Bitcoin is taking a turn for the worse. We're knocking back on extreme fear. If you the CMC, the fear market cap, the CMC fear and greed index, tomorrow will be in extreme fear again on Bitcoin, essentially, the way it's headed. So that's very unfortunate. It was triggered by the Fed, triggered by that meeting. But here are two facts to leave you with. Here's one fact that, of course, I know of, but I'm not very comfortable because I only own the common. Well, I added a derivative of one of preferreds today. I posted that on Patreon. But aside from that, I'm still mostly exposed to the common. Here's the one uncomfortable truth if you own the common. If you own the common, Saylor will destroy the common to save the preferreds, to save the dividend. He will do whatever it takes to pay that dividend, because he knows that if he can't pay the dividend, it's a house of cards. So the more we have bears and bearish argument against the incomes preferred, against the STRCs of the world, the more that bear argument lasts, the more it hurts the common, actually. So the common is the one that's going to be hurt first. I don't own Stretch. I never liked it. Why have I not never liked Stretch? Because I believe in a hard money standard, and I believe that if hard money becomes a thing, Stretch at one point will only pay 4% or 5%. And so that's the reason why I don't own Stretch. But make no mistake, MSTR stock will be destroyed just to save Stretch. That's the Stretch privilege. And what is that privilege? What is the benefit of that privilege, of that Stretch privilege? Well, let's talk about the three assets and let's be objective. Let's look at the past 6 months. I wish I could have an easy screenshot from 1010, but I can't. So this is the best I can do. Roughly 6 months ago. I guess I picked YTD here, but it's about the same. Bitcoin's down about 30%. Strategy's down about 30%. Strategy actually slightly outperforming Bitcoin because Bitcoin dropped so much and Strategy generated a yield. We had a 10% plus yield on Strategy, so roughly the same. The main takeaway of these charts is Stretch. Stretch, in a matter of 6 months, is down 9.5%. It's down 9.5% in 6 months, and it has paid about 6% in dividend. So Stretch is really down 3% when Strategy and when Bitcoin are down 30%. So the instrument, in my view, is still working. It is now clear that the yield of Stretch needs to be increased. In my view, Saylor will do that. But if you look at these stocks and these assets, keep in mind that the belief in Bitcoin is paramount. If Bitcoin fails, all of this will fail. The reason why I sleep well at night is because I don't think Bitcoin is going to fail. I think Bitcoin is going to benefit the most in a world of AI. And if you believe that, and if you believe we're seeing Bitcoin at 150 pretty soon, then you likely know that these assets are going back to 100. But anyways, this is not investment advice. I could not be more clear. This is not financial advice. This is literally only entertainment for you. Please like, please subscribe. Follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.